Oh, sure. Wait till I'm downstairs doing something else and have my phone charging for security, because my child may call me on this phone. My child may call me on my rotary phone, which is still plugged in, which will work even in a power outage unless the lines are cut. But obviously I just realized that the new people who are taking over the country don't want to have the telephone poles, because that's a lot of maintenance. So they can cut it down to nobody, and the one guy can run it all from the supervillain. I mean, honestly, my stories and my comics are just running all together, because it's just like that book where the bowl started falling from the sky or whatever, right? So what it is something happens to you. Like years ago, I was telling about that Sophia Loren movie, or the one where she comes over on the boat with the boy and she bleeds to death. And I haven't hit where I know who did that to me yet. It wasn't me bleeding, but it was me aware of it. It was a big, heavy, fat person. And I'm sorry, but fat is sometimes somebody pulled up over something somewhere spiritually. You have to acknowledge the subconscious. Even the Dutch psychologists acknowledge the subconscious and its effect on the body and the mind. The spirituality, I'm not finding it as well explained. But most religions and most belief systems and most nationalities or groups have some belief in spirituality and how it affects the body and travel through time and spirituality through time. But if something happens and you're aware of, I was sitting in my room. I woke up in the bed and I could hear a voice coming from my VCR. This was another time, but it wasn't coming from the VCR, and I couldn't turn her voice off. Okay, and she kept saying that she was speaking impaired, but it's how her voice was coming out from whatever. Perhaps someone had put some little device in one of my machines inside. I put the machine away. Eventually it broke anyway, I think, and I haven't noticed it since. But it went on for some time. But someone could have come in also and poked it in around the edge, one of those old VCRs, right? A little tiny speaker, and put it in around the edge of your VCR. It was coming from the VCR. I noticed it somewhere else on a light, but only from the light. And they were trying to say it's related to light sources and spirits are attaching themselves to light sources, but I had lights here and it didn't come from my lights here, just my VCR. But at the same time, I was sitting on my bed. I may have not been well or something, or had a cold, because back then I gave into it. I didn't know any better. You take your NyQuil, you sit down, and I was playing on the bed or whatever, and this male voice was coming from up on my dresser, around the VCR area, but it was something else that it was at by that point. And he was saying that he was Emma's father, really, and Chris wasn't, and all of these things. And I just kept feeling heavier and heavier, and abused. Sexually abused by a really young man's voice, and I could visualize him. But the funny thing is, I met him a few years later. I actually met him, and I perceived him, and I knew I was perceiving him from somebody else's viewpoint, someone who knew him really well, and I knew I was too comfortable with him, and I commented on that several times, that I'm not breaking any boundaries with him, but somebody at me is way more maternal to him than I ever could be, and I just can't contain them, the walk-through, not the walk-over, they're tiny. But I didn't get what it was. I could only get this walk-through, which I guess they were there to muffle it, because obviously perhaps they could have gotten rid of me before I hit the time, when I finally hit the time in another place with him, where I realized this is the moment, or this is the location that he was doing that voice from and that abuse of me from, and I can't see it, so he had to have done it from that location to me when I wasn't there. But this is how obvious it is if somebody keeps themselves healthy and pays attention to their spirituality and physicality and what other people may be able to do to them using devices or spirituality.